Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Only Murders in the Building, Season 3, Episode 8. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought that was a beautiful twist to bring. Didn't see that one coming. Maybe other people did, but it never crossed my mind that Dickie would be Loretta's son. I mean, they introduced the element of, oh yeah, Dickie was adopted last episode. Never crossed my mind to think like, oh, maybe it's going to be something. Because at first I was almost thinking like, well, because I confused myself at first as the opening was happening, because I was like, oh, is she actually Ben's kid? And maybe, but then I was like, no, Ben's not the one that was adopted. Dickie was. But I thought like maybe on some level, like, oh, like they made it seem like Dickie was the only one that was adopted, and that maybe I thought she kind of slid in and was like, oh, and here's Ben. I thought that's what happened. It was like, is that why they had but it's like, no, Dickie is her son. I was like, interesting, especially because she had the acting bug. She wanted to be in theater and she got an opportunity, but then she found out she was pregnant and like all her dreams, all she's ever wanted. I thought that was so interesting because she was, she makes this comparison, especially that opening monologue of kind of that whole thing of their lines can be delivered in so many different ways, and you kind of have to decide whether you're okay with the choices that you make as an actor. And I was like, once again, there's like these layered elements to it because obviously it applies to her life, and she made a choice that she kind of had to, stick with, because it's like, right, she wanted to go after her dream. Sadly, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Like, it wasn't success that came at first. It wasn't even success that came later. This play is like her opportunity. So for her, this production is her opportunity. And so it is a lifetime of regrets of always wondering about Dickie, because Dickie's parents would send her updates, about him. And it's like, yeah, she knows like, oh, it's a little sad, but it's also a little nice to be able to kind of get, and it's like, right. Every picture of Ben was never about Ben. It was about Dickie. Now it also changes it gives a new lens to that fight between Ben and Loretta that Charles witnessed. I mean, he didn't get the full context of it, and we've heard Loretta kind of talk a little bit about it, but we didn't really know. Now, part of me, I mean, having been around each other for months, she got close to Dickie, and I think that's something the show kind of hid. To be fair, we never really got to witness that 4 months of like everything coming together before opening night and stuff. So we still haven't really gotten that. So we didn't really get an opportunity to see that Loretta and Dickie got closer. In fact, they haven't really had any scenes together, but it was, now in retrospect, it also was on purpose because she is admiring him from a distance, and I think it's supposed to play into that. Like, oh, we don't see them together often. It's like, yeah, because she makes a point of that, but she also uses it as an excuse to be around him a lot. So anyway, my point is, she witnessed how Ben treated Dickie. And now we as the audience know, because Theo, Taubert, and Mabel pieced it together last episode, that Cobra was something Dickie made and Ben took all the credit. So for Loretta, it's the situation of she probably doesn't know that. Maybe she does. I mean, who knows? Maybe Dickie opened up to her about that, because he probably opened up to her without even realizing why, because he has such a complicated relationship with his brother. So it makes sense that like, oh, he found someone who's actually interested in him, because everyone around him only uses him as access to get to Ben, because Ben's the one that's special. He's the one that's the special miracle child in his parents' eyes. So there's that. And he never felt like he was important to anyone. For Loretta to give him that, because there's even that line from Oliver being like, oh, you think Dickie's the killer? No, I can live with that. Dickie's not really part of the production, because Dickie didn't matter to anyone. He doesn't matter to anyone in that same capacity like he does to Loretta. So, but I'm going on this diatribe, but it's all connected. That I just think Loretta probably didn't like the way Ben treated Dickie, because Ben was a prick and he treated a lot, had beef with a lot of people, but he definitely treated his brother terribly, which is like, I don't know if that's his overcompensation for the fact is that, right, you're the one that I kind of owe a lot of my success to, and I just don't want to admit it, and I can't admit it, because that's his way to kind of, and maybe it also stems from his own insecurities of never feeling like he's good enough, because we know his issues with Charles, and it's like, right, I was 8 years old, and you're the reason why I didn't get on Brazos back in the day or something like that. Like, you kind of tore me down. And that was Ben's issues with Charles. And maybe that kind of stayed with him as an adult. So he just glassed on and grabbed onto whatever he could. Even he had to be a dick because he was overcompensating, because he never felt like he belonged. He never felt like he was good enough, because a lot of his success came from his brother. Like, right, this thing I'm kind of known for, like, that wasn't even me. That was my brother. So it all really plays into it. And I think it was so interesting for them to make the decision to reveal that at the beginning of the episode, like the whole Loretta being his mom, and have you stick with that the entirety of the episode, that in the back of your mind, and just their interactions. And it's actually really sweet the way you see her like talk to him like that. And you're just like, oh, like he has no idea. And she wants to reveal it to him. And it's like, we don't really know why. I guess because the production is about to start, and maybe it's like, right, all stars are aligning for the first time in her life. Her son's kind of in her life again. In fact, she took this opportunity because she found out Ben was taking this, and wherever Ben goes, Dickie's going to be as well. So she took that opportunity. That's why she really took this. So not only like, oh, do I have this golden opportunity? Like Oliver sees something in me, but I also get to spend this time with my son. So it's like all the stars are aligning. This is the time. This is the moment. My entire life all comes together in this moment, this magnanimous moment. So I think that's what really made her decide to choose now of any time to tell him. So serendipitous timing too, because I'm blanking on the term they said in the episode, but it's the term for, hey, this is where the actors like try out their lines and combine it with the orchestra. As Loretta put it, it's like, right, you get to finally see whether or not those choices that you decided to make as an actor, whether or not they work in conjunction with the orchestra and the music, and see if it all plays out. So they're running their lines and doing it with the orchestra. Mabel shows up. Her, Oliver, and Charles are still in that awkward spot. Charles and Oliver have made up, but they haven't quite made up with Mabel. And it's like, oh, okay, so now it's a situation of you released a podcast without us. And I love like Toblerone being Taubert's real name. He's like, and I'm curious, does Charles really mean that? Well, like, no, I actually do like Taubert now. I think probably like after episode 6, he probably legitimately did start liking Taubert. But it's like, oh yeah, I'm staying at Theo's place, and I'm like, oh, it does feel like, that's why I was kind of catching those vibes last episode too. Like, it seemed like Theo might like her. I mean, he did like her before, if I remember correctly. I think he did. Maybe I'm misremembering. We know like he like really liked her friend, and that was like part of season 1's story. But I do believe he probably does legitimately like her. But it might just be a thing of like, no, like Theo didn't really have many friends, so like he really glommed onto Mabel. But it could be more. We'll see. But nevertheless, I think it's so that partnership between this trio, our trio, still not fully gelling, because Oliver's like, oh, okay, like, do we really have to investigate? And Charles be like, all right, come on, 3, 2, oh, you guys are cutting it close, but it didn't necessarily, they were not gelling. But it's like, all right, Detective Williams showed up, which I was like, hey, because I thought our new detective was going to be like the main dude, but they brought in Williams, which she was kind of upset, because she's like, if it wasn't for their investigation, she's like, I guess it's like, all right, I gotta, like, I guess because of, she never really explained why, like, she went from her cushy position that she was in to where she is, like, back to, like, that like jumping on this investigation. I'm curious, is she like, all right, no one knows this triple threat like I do, so I gotta take over the investigation now. Like, I gotta, because I have my relationship with them. Like, I don't know if that's what that is. Like, she never really explained why, like, she was brought back. Well, maybe it's, because I was like, because I was about to say home dude getting released. It's like, what's his name? Greg? It's like him getting released. It's like, that was never her collar to begin with. So that's why I'm like confused on why she came back. Not mad about it. I love having her back and her just being like, NYPD motherfuckers. And she's like, yeah, one of you, the killer's one of you people in here. And she's like, oh, I always wanted to say that. She's like, did that sound good? They were like, yes, yeah, man, that sounded good, And so they're trying to peek in on her interrogations. And I love that she's talking to Bobo, and Bobo's like, yeah, what was his mom or something? He's like, yeah, she only has one foot. She's like, Bobo. This is an interrogation. Drop all that family shit. I'm not here to hear you discuss about all that. I love that so much. But also Oliver and Charles, their little plan, I was like, are you guys really doing this? Like when they're trying to stick around in her interrogations and they're acting like buffoons. I was like, did you guys really think that was going to work? I was like, I kept wondering, I'm like, are you going to plant something in it? They did. They ultimately ended up planting the camera, but even that was just kind of a passing. I'm like, maybe they legitimately think this is going to work. It's like, are you serious? It's like, but they handled that beautifully. It's like, oh yeah, everyone takes us for buffoons, so we leaned into it. And I love that it's like, they were planting the seeds because they know that, they're like, yeah, we know, Williams is a theater nerd, and planted the seeds of like, oh, Charles is like a deer in the headlights, and they knew that Williams couldn't pass up an opportunity to see the train wreck, but your boy Charles went out there and massacred. I was like, yo, and you can see everyone behind Charles while he's doing it, because I mean, every other time he's done it, it's been a complete and utter catastrophe. Granted, it all came down to this. It's like, to help with the investigation, we needed it to work, so they needed the time frame from Williams to make it happen. So I was like, oh, but Charles killed it. It's just kind of like, hey, it's like, dude, it's actually a really nice bop too, and like especially when he gets into it. So I mean, it's Steve Martin, so it shouldn't be a surprise, but it's still kind of like, you also didn't realize like how, because this is also our first time hearing the entire bit. Because it's like 2 minutes and 40 something seconds. I'm sure that song isolated in itself has got to be either someone's ripped that and put it online, or like there might already, because I know some shows do officially release that type of stuff. Like I'm sure you might be able to find it on Spotify or something. Like I said, if it hasn't already been like ripped and put online, I'm sure it's like I could also see like even like on YouTube, like I'll go ahead and say Hulu. I could definitely see them isolating this scene and putting it on like YouTube or something. I could see that if and showing an official capacity, or whether or not. Also, since I did bring up Hulu, let's not forget we're in the middle of a SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike. I try to avoid mentioning the companies that are being struck, but it's also because obviously Hulu is under the Disney umbrella. Maybe even more so after they're trying to buy tensions and all this side. Once again, making a whole point, like that's why I always try to avoid mentioning the networks these TV shows have been airing on. But since I do, I've also got to bring up rights again. Once again, make sure everyone gets paid properly across the board. Writers, actors, they should get a slice of the pie. So I just figured since perfect time to kind of insert that. But either way, getting back into the swing of things. Loretta did kind of figure the moment the book was missing from her room, that she noticed at the beginning of the episode, she was like, right, if anyone's going to take it, it was Oliver. And so she confronts Oliver about it, and he gives it to her, and he's like, right, you don't actually need to explain anything. She's like, thank you. He's like, okay, so this is the part where you do explain everything to me, and then we never mention it again. It's like, he tried to be the supportive boyfriend by being like, you're right, you don't have to explain anything to me. But it's like, no, in actuality, she's like, you don't actually think I'm the murderer. He's like, of course I don't. Sadly, he's suspected for a little while, considering, our trio's history with people close to them. Once again, the Charles and the Joan of it all, of course, that's going to be like, ugh, and then you kind of suspected Joy of being the killer. So it's like, ugh. So, and then Mabel was also in that situation where her significant other in season 1 ended up kind of being a suspect for a previous thing, and then maybe also connected to Tim's murder, and then there was everything from last season where her significant other, so it's like a running theme in our group that, our SOs might be like, suspected killers or actual killers in the case of Joan, so. But either way, I really loved her conversation with Mabel, because I don't think we've had them have any real... there's also the episode of, like, interactions where I was like, I don't think Mabel and her had ever had any interaction so far over the season. Like, not, like, lengthy. I think this might have been the longest scene they've had together. But it's like, oh, so you think Dickie, like, why do you think Dickie's like, oh, I can't see it. She's like, granted, look at this eclectic group of people that we are working with. I'm just throwing a name out there, Bobo. Do we really know Bobo? It's like, but you just said poisoning was more like a woman's like form of killing, and she's like, yes, of course, but she's like, I can't even picture Dickie doing it. Even being like, oh, what about KT? she's a bitch. It's like, oh, come on. It's like, but at the same time, you're like, it's really sweet. So, I mean, this doubly, triply confirms, like, there's no way it is Loretta. So, was it Danga Dang? I'm sure they are going to be, I believe it was Danga Dang, saying they were like, oh, like, for it not to be Meryl Streep that's going to be sad. It's like, it definitely isn't her. I mean, to be fair, it's like, you saw the red herring going, like, from a mile away, so I figured it wouldn't be, but she still has a significant role in this, that she is potentially the mother of the killer, so that complicates things, because she's torn between, like, right, she's doing everything she can to protect him, especially when she had that actually really dope conversation with Donna, because it's like, right, to be fair, it's sweet what Donna said, but you also got to remember she has a very unhealthy relationship with her son, and I'm sure, Loretta's been around when they've had their weird interactions, like Cliff and Donna have had their weird thing, but I think it's so interesting because it's like the opposite spectrum where, like, she didn't really have much of a relationship with Dickie, whereas Donna, like, has a very unhealthy relationship with her son. So it's like an interesting opposite ends of the spectrum in that regard. It does feel like they really are leading into it being Dickie, but it feels like that's going to be like a last minute twist that it's not him. I mean, because especially how that ties into that conversation that Dickie and Loretta had where, you know, for him, it's like, oh yeah, my brother was a dick. We had an argument the last time we talked before he was, you know, quote unquote poisoned. But for him, it's like, yeah, it sucks. But like, you know, I was kind of sad, but he's like, actually for a few minutes, for the first time, I felt free. And even Loretta having that like somber, yeah, I do get it. It's like, right. She knows that. She gave him up for the fact of what she wanted. She wanted free because she knew she'd be tied down and basically had to give up her dreams, which it is that complicated thing of like the road you didn't travel, the road you didn't lead, considering like, hey, my life didn't turn out the way I thought. I was going to have my big shot and like my career wasn't what I thought it'd be. I was going from place to place, job to job, trying, and nothing ever worked out until now. Like, decades of it not working out, and it's like, right, I could have been. I even love at one point, he's like, yeah, Dickie, he's a kid. She's like, isn't he like 15? She's like, yeah. It's like, you know, I'm sure so it's, I thought it was cute, but you know, even Loretta being like, I'm sorry, and Dickie's like, no, it's not your fault. She does blame herself. It's like all that you had to deal with being like second fiddle to your brother your entire life, and for him to get all the glitz and the glamour and the praise when you are a big part of why he is who he is, it's just like, right, you've had to like suffer through that, and that's because of me. I thought I was leaving you with good parents, and you know, who's to say, like, maybe they weren't awful parents, but the moment Ben came around, things changed, you know, and that's sad because it all, and that is an element of, you do hear stories of, like, I'm not saying, I don't know statistically how that plays out, because it varies from person to person, but you do hear situations where it's like, right, an adopted child, the moment, like, a biological sibling comes into place of, like, oh yeah, your adopted parents end up having a child of their own, it can complicate things because it's like, oh, they might grow more attached because, hey, this child shares our DNA. A part of us exists in this child, whereas someone who's adopted is like, there's none of us in you. And once again, not trying to paint all adopted parents like that. Like I said, it's like, I'm sure like the statistic probably, it isn't like but it's something you do hear about. I'm not saying like it's super, super common, but it's enough that you're like, right, it's something that should be noted and thought about. And you see it kind of reflected in Dickie and Ben's relationship and dynamic of their parents at the very least. So our boy Howard doing his part, talking to Mabel about like, okay, he wants to try and be on the podcast, which is so interesting because like he's never really wanted that before, had he? Not that I can remember, but, you know, it's been a while since I saw season 1 and season 2, so maybe there were moments that he tried to, like, creep onto it, and I just don't remember that. He's never really pushed it before now, at least not so blatantly, but maybe he has, and I just don't remember. But yeah, the night of Ben's poisoning, someone shredding a document, and so he's trying to piece stuff together, which I love the whole bit of, oh yeah, I can take a word and tell you all the different words you can make up in that. God, what was the first word was something? He was like, yeah, puzzle. And he's like, I think up is the only word you can make in that regard. Give me another word. And she gave him another one, and he started naming off. He's like, Mabel, we don't have time for this. It's like, you're the one that wanted it, bro. But yeah, it it didn't work out. Like, they tried to tape stuff together, but they did get a sliver of something to show that, okay, this was the night of Ben's his double death, because it was all in the same night. But, so Howard's going to be working on that. I love Mabel being like, yeah, I can help out with puzzles. He was like, give me some tape and let me leave the room and let me get to work, you know? So he was kind of beating himself down. He's like, oh, I'm not good. And Mabel didn't. She's like, uh-huh. He's like, oh, so you could at least kind of deny it a little bit or something. But either way, so it's going to be interesting to find out what document was shredded. Was it Dickie that was in there? Because the rat poison is also in, because it's KT's office, and she'd even said, like, right, I didn't lock the door, so whoever was in there, it wasn't me. So, like I say, a lot of this is pointing towards Dickie, but I just don't know. And just kind of having everything come together where it's like, right, we have Maxine there, which even she's like, right, I was actually coming here because I was ready to kind of savage this, my review for this, but she's like, honestly, this sings. And so, like, you'll have to wait for my review before, but, like, she was really digging and she was really feeling the vibe and everything. Especially Loretta, because she's like, oh yeah, like, she's definitely something special, which, like, just after Loretta had that conversation with Dickie, your boy, Oliver says those magical 3 words, I love you. You know, it's like, it's really sweet. It kind of came that he's like, I just want to go back, you know, to your kooky apartment and, you know, fall asleep in your arms. I was like, oh, Oliver. Because I was about to say, like, because I've mentioned it before, like, I don't think Oliver's dated since him and his ex, you know, got divorced. So I think for him, he's just kind of put his career first. So for this is the first time, you know, everyone's got their second win. And obviously this applies both for Loretta and Oliver, both career-wise and relationship-wise. So I think that's that kind of neat, like, second wind aspect of it all. It's going to be interesting to see. We'll get probably a lot more pieces to the puzzle next episode, too, because that's probably when Mabel and Oliver and Charles will, like, watch the Williams, her interrogating the cast to kind of find out some stuff and kind of piece everything together finally, maybe. We'll talk about the Oliver of it all in a second, but of course you knew when it was coming down to it that Loretta was going to make that decision that she would take the fall for her son, you know, because everything was culminating and being like, right, I got to do, because it's like, right, they're bringing in Dickie, but why? They never actually explained why they wanted to talk to Dickie, but it's like, right, you're interrogating everyone here, but it might not have been for the reasons Loretta thought, because they never really brought up that they suspected. I can't remember I don't think Mabel talked to Williams about her suspecting Dickie. Which they end up going through Loretta's book and finding the letter and finding out about Dickie and everything. And obviously for Oliver, it's quite the shock because it's like, right, he just confessed to Loretta. She's confessing to this crime. And in that moment, he has a heart because everything's falling apart. Like, hey, this is one of your major leads, but also this is the woman you love. And, you know, it's a lot of stress and he has a heart attack. Because he still hasn't because he's been sitting on it. The only person that knows about this is his doctor and his son. He's kept this quiet from everyone about his circumstances because it hadn't really come up, you know. Even I kind of let it slip my mind of like, oh yeah, like he hadn't really told anyone about it. And for it to kind of culminate in this moment, sadly. So I think Oliver's going to be okay, but like what that means going forward, I mean, 'cause I'm sure Mabel and Charles are going to be like, whoa, like, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? You know, I mean, once again, like everyone's so caught up in their lives and obviously this means so much to Oliver and also Loretta means so much to him. So for all this to kind of happen, I even love that line from Williams, what she was saying, like, I came here for the drama and you brought it. It's like, yeah, she was at the centerfold of a lot of this. It's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. Like I said, like if it's not Dickie, which it feels like they're really leaning into it being Dickie, part of me wonders if it's Cliff or not. Just kind of throwing it out there because of the parallels. It makes me wonder if it's going to end up being him. Because I'm like, but what would be his, once again, motivations for? Like, would it be some, like, twisted producer angle coming from it, trying to make the thing bigger than what? I don't know. Because, once again, we don't have the context of what that shredded document was. Not what document, but whatever it was that was shredded. We have no idea what it was. And that will end up shining a light on a lot, I'm sure. So I just don't think it's going to be simply like it's Dickie, but I think when it's all said and done, Loretta and Dickie will end up having a relationship. Because it could almost probably mirror a little bit, like, not in the same capacity, obviously, but mirror a little like Charles still visiting Joan while she was in prison type of situation. But other than that, I don't think it's going to be Dickie. I think it's going to be someone else, but we'll have to wait and see. I am curious. Once again, I'm not completely throwing out the twin theory yet. Once again, dang, I see you. I'm still keeping it there. I'm still keeping it in the back of my mind. Like, hey, there's 2 episodes left. I'm assuming this season is going to be 10 because the previous ones have been. But I'm like, I'm still 2 episodes for it to be like, and twin twist, So I haven't forgotten you, dude. So if you don't like, dude's my gender neutral term. So like, I call everyone dude, dudette, anyone outside of that spectrum, in between that spectrum, I'll call everyone dude. Just so you know. So like, just let you know I see you. But regardless, I'm really curious to ultimately see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good